21 days, an angel sent from heaven could not reach the prophet Daniel, not because of distance, but because something stopped him. The scriptures call him only by a title, the Prince of Persia. Was he a fallen angel ruling over an empire, a spiritual overlord commanding armies in the unseen realm? Tonight, we journey into the shadows between heaven and earth, where angels and powers wage war beyond mortal sight, and where one prince stands against the messengers of God. The city was silent under the night sky. Babylon, though conquered by the Medo-Persians, still hummed with the quiet breath of empire. In a dimly lit room, an old man knelt, his head bowed low to the ground. His hair was white now, his frame worn by decades of service under kings and conquerors, yet his spirit burned. His name was Daniel. He had been fasting, not the fast of the weak or the reluctant, but the deliberate abstaining of one who seeks the face of God. For 3 full weeks, he ate no rich food, tasted no wine, and let no fragrance anoint his skin. His prayers were not brief petitions, but deep cries that rose like incense, day and night. Why? Because he had seen visions of kingdoms rising and falling, of wars to come, of God's purposes unfolding through history. And yet, there were mysteries he could not understand. The burden weighed on him like a stone pressing upon his chest, so he prayed and waited. But heaven seemed silent. On the 24th day of the first month, Daniel stood by the bank of the great river Tigris. The water moved slow, reflecting the pale sky above. His thoughts were heavy. Perhaps he had expected some clear answer by now, a dream, a word, a sign. But then it happened. A figure appeared before him, not walking toward him, but suddenly there. His robe was white as lightning, his waist girded with gold from a distant land. His face shone like a flash of lightning, his eyes blazed like burning torches, and his voice rolled like the roar of 1,000 waters. The men with Daniel did not see him, but they felt it. Terror seized them, and they fled, leaving Daniel alone. His strength drained away, his knees trembled, and his breath failed him. Then the figure spoke, "Do not be afraid, Daniel. From the first day you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come because of them." But then the words that changed everything. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me for 21 days, until Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. The Prince of Persia, not a man, not a mortal ruler, but a spiritual being so powerful that even a messenger from the courts of heaven could be delayed. From that moment, the veil of the unseen realm lifts just enough for us to glimpse a reality that most never consider. The affairs of nations are not merely decided in palaces or battlefields, but in the war between spiritual powers. In Daniel's day, Persia was the dominant empire, vast, wealthy, and unstoppable. But in the shadows, a different ruler reigned over it, the Prince of Persia, a spiritual overlord influencing kings, shaping policies, and resisting the purposes of God. This was no ordinary demon. Scripture calls him a prince, a term that suggests authority, territory, and command. In the same way Michael is called the Prince of Israel, this being was the counterpart over Persia. But unlike Michael, he did not serve the Most High. For the next 2 hours of this journey, we will walk slowly through this mystery. We will explore who or what the Prince of Persia might have been. We will step into the courtrooms of heaven where decisions about nations are made. We will examine the strategies of the unseen enemy, the resilience of God's messengers, and the role of Michael the Archangel in breaking through the resistance. We will move through history, from the rivers of ancient Persia to the great prophetic visions of Daniel, and into the teachings of the New Testament, where Paul warns that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of the darkness of this age. And as we go deeper, we will see how this one mysterious prince fits into the vast, unfolding tapestry of God's plan, a plan that cannot be stopped, no matter how fierce the resistance in the heavens. Now let us begin. The angel's words hung in the air like the echo of a thunderclap. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me for 21 days. Daniel's mind must have turned these words over and over. The empire that now ruled over his people, Persia, was not only governed by kings in flesh and blood. Over it loomed a shadow, unseen but powerful, resisting the very will of God. From the first day Daniel began to pray, the answer was sent. Yet for 3 weeks it was blocked, not lost, not forgotten, blocked. What kind of power can hold back a messenger from heaven? Persia was the jewel of its age, stretching from the shores of the Aegean to the mountains of India, its banners fluttering over conquered lands. Cyrus the Great had brought it to glory, and his successors expanded its reach. Its wealth flowed from trade routes, its armies marched with discipline, and its kings ruled with a mix of law and iron will. But above every earthly throne, there is a spiritual reality. The prophet Ezekiel spoke of a prince and a king over Tyre, the prince being mortal, the king being something more, something ancient. The same pattern seems to appear here. Persia's mortal kings sat on thrones of stone and gold, but its true ruler was the Prince of Persia, an entity of authority in the unseen realm. If Michael is called the Prince of Israel, protector and guardian of God's people, then this Prince of Persia was his opposite, a spiritual power assigned to Persia, not to protect it in righteousness, but to steer it toward purposes opposed to God's will. The angel who came to Daniel does not name himself. Some believe he was Gabriel, the messenger who had appeared to Daniel before, bringing understanding of visions. Others argue this was another mighty servant of God. What we know is this: he was sent directly in answer to Daniel's prayer. His mission was urgent. Yet for 21 days, the Prince of Persia fought to keep him from reaching the prophet. We are not told exactly how angels engage in such conflict. There are no swords of steel or battlefields like those of men, but the language of withstanding and help speaks of resistance, a lock of wills, a clash of powers. This was not a random demon lashing out in rebellion. This was strategic. The Prince of Persia knew that the message Daniel was about to receive concerned empires, kingdoms, and the destiny of nations. Stopping that message was worth a sustained fight. And then Michael came. Michael is called one of the chief princes, the great prince who stands watch over Israel. In Revelation, he leads the armies of heaven against the dragon. In Jude, he contends even for the body of Moses. His very name means who is like God, a challenge to every proud power that would rise against the Most High. Michael's arrival tipped the balance. The Prince of Persia could not hold back both the messenger and Michael. The resistance broke, and the messenger reached Daniel. Yet even then, the angel said his task was not over. When I return, I must fight again with the Prince of Persia, and after that, the Prince of Greece will come. The battle over Persia was not an isolated event. It was part of a chain, a sequence of spiritual conflicts tied to the rise and fall of empires. The Bible offers glimpses, just glimpses, of these territorial spirits. In Deuteronomy, the Most High is said to have divided the nations and set their boundaries according to the number of the sons of God. In Psalm 82, God stands in the divine council and rebukes spiritual rulers for their injustice. Some fell into rebellion, seeking worship and power for themselves. Nations bowed to idols, but behind those idols stood real spiritual powers, not merely human invention. The Prince of Persia was one of these. He ruled not from Persepolis or Susa, but from the heights of the unseen realm, influencing kings, whispering into councils, shaping the course of history. Why would the enemy fight so hard to hold Persia? In Daniel's time, Persia had allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem. Cyrus had even decreed that the temple be rebuilt. That might seem like a victory for God's people, and it was. But the enemy knew that the prophetic timeline was moving forward. Persia was part of God's plan to restore Israel after exile. If the Prince of Persia could influence Persian policy, slow the work, stir up opposition, shift alliances, he could delay or distort that restoration. And in the grander scheme, every delay in God's plan was a win for the forces of darkness. The delay was not because God lacked power. The Most High could have swept the Prince of Persia aside in an instant. But for reasons rooted in his sovereign purposes, God allows certain conflicts to unfold over time. In this case, Daniel's persistence in prayer was part of the battle. From the first day, God heard him, but the answer came after 3 weeks of continued intercession. This was not because God was hesitant, it was because Daniel's prayers were part of the heavenly strategy. In some mysterious way, his faith and endurance aligned with the angelic struggle. The angel spoke of another prince, the Prince of Greece, who would come after the battle with Persia. This foreshadowed the next empire to rise after Persia fell, the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. Again, an earthly change of power reflected a shift in the unseen realm. The Prince of Greece would step onto the stage, bringing new challenges for God's people, new cultural and spiritual pressures. The war in the heavens is not static, it moves with the tides of history. Above all these conflicts lies the throne of God. Daniel had already seen visions of this throne, fiery wheels, rivers of flame, thousands upon thousands attending the Ancient of Days. From this court, decrees go forth that shape the rise and fall of empires. The Prince of Persia could resist a messenger, he could delay, but he could not overturn what was decreed. The empires of men may seem to last forever, but in God's timeline, they are but seasons. The Prince of Persia is long gone, at least in title. Persia fell to Greece, Greece to Rome, Rome to the kingdoms of this world. But the pattern remains. Over every nation, there are powers and principalities, some loyal to God, others in rebellion. Paul's words echo across the centuries. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. When nations make decisions that defy all logic, when leaders rise with sudden and strange influence, when entire cultures shift in a generation, we may be seeing the shadows of these unseen rulers. The scriptures tell us that Michael will rise again in the last days, a time of distress unlike any before. Revelation shows the final defeat of the dragon and his angels. The war that Daniel glimpsed in part will end in total victory. The Prince of Persia was but one chapter in a long, unfolding war. And yet, his story reminds us that prayer is not empty, that persistence matters, and that even the smallest act of faith can align with the armies of heaven. And so Daniel's vision closes. The angel delivers his message, visions of kings yet to come, wars yet to be fought. Daniel is left trembling but strengthened. His prayers have touched the highest heavens. His endurance has outlasted the resistance of a prince. And the message reaches us still, centuries later. There is more to the world than we see. Kingdoms rise and fall, but behind them, a greater war rages. And in that war, every prayer counts, every stand matters, and every believer plays a part in the victory of the King who reigns above all princes.